So welcome to another episode of the Create Brave podcast. I've got Hannah Cox in the studio, which I have to say I've been really excited about. Hannah is the founder of the Better Business Network. She's the founder of Better Not Stop. She is an ultra runner and she is the creator of Project Salt Run, which is an incredible challenge she has set herself, which I'm desperate to talk to her more about. You're an activist as well. First question, Hannah. How do you align all of those identities into one person?
I think it's like a Venn diagram of lots of things crossing over. So the Better Business Network exists because I was trying to find that community for my business, which didn't exist. So it kind of evolved out of that. And then Project Salt Run evolved from feeling that we needed to make big, bold action sooner rather than later. And I personally needed to feel a bit more empowered about what is possible to make the world better.
Yeah.
So they all kind of meld into each other and are part of the same thing, really.
Okay, wow, we're going to really dig into that. And I was saying to you before we started recording that I kind of pride myself on really preparing for the podcast and the interviews that I do a lot of research on people. I write a lot of notes. I think a lot about how I want to frame the questioning. And then it came to sitting down and thinking about how to talk to you and to frame the conversation. I almost felt overwhelmed because there is so much for us to explore and to, I think, learn from you, particularly over your experiences of the past year. So I'll try and take us back first of all. And if you could, is it a good place to start a year ago? And the origin of Project Salt Run? Yeah, talk to us a little bit about it.
It would be a place to start. I think it actually started a bit before then, though, because we used to share an office.
Yeah.
And Claire and I would both be in very early in the morning because I'd like to get work done before kind of the rest of the team came in. But Claire would have run there before. So no matter how productive I was feeling when I turned up at 7 a.m, I knew Claire had been more productive. And
Sorry about that.
And then I remember actually, because I was thinking about this, about those kind of subconscious, the little hints. And then I remember when Dom, your co-founder, about 6-7 months before we moved out of your office and into our own as a business, started really taking care of his own health as well and really focusing on it. His nutrition and his training. And I was kind of watching you both do that while growing a successful business with a really good company culture. And it was a bit like, well, there's not really much excuse then. If Claire and Dom are managing to do it, then... But it was almost more in awe of what you were doing, not thinking that was something that would ever land on my doorstep. But I remember watching both of your kind of fitness journeys, and there must have been something through osmosis that kind of like tapped into me when that happened. We moved into our office. I got very busy with the business, and then we got to basically, about 12 months ago now, when I reconnected with an old friend, Dan Beaumont, who, since speaking to me 2 or 3 years previously when we'd lost touch, had really got into ultra running as well. And that's kind of where the Project Salt Run story started.
Yeah. And back, the Project Salt Run challenge started a year ago, didn't it? But the idea has been something that has been buried in your brain for how long?
10 years.
10 years. So is it fair to say you are obsessed with a hedge and have been for 10 years?
It is very fair to say I'm obsessed with just one particular hedge, not all hedges.
Okay. Well, this is a safe space, so if you could just explain that a bit more for those who don't know.
So it starts off a bit of a sad story. My dad died in 2011, and it was just after I'd moved to Manchester, and he was born in India. He was born in Calcutta, and he didn't really talk much about his family history. We didn't have a very good relationship through my teenage years. We'd actually only just recently reconnected. So I felt like I was missing a very big chunk of my identity when he died, an understanding of who I was. And I love history, and I started reading lots and lots of books on Indian history, colonial history, the East India Company. And it turns out when you've been reading lots of books on Indian colonial history, after a few years, there's not many books left. And it literally got suggested to me in my recommendations as a book I should read called The Great Hedge of India. And I read this book and was completely fascinated with the story. One, because the writer of the book had found out the story through picking up a book in a secondhand bookshop and reading about the story himself and wanting to delve into it. So the book I read was the culmination of 5 years of research of a writer called Roy Moxham. And essentially, in the 19th century, the East India Company, who we all know as a big bad company, had built a 4,000 kilometre long hedge through the centre of India to enforce the salt tax. It existed for about 30 years in its entirety. Hedges are man-made, so it had 14,000 British Army officers manning this hedge. And as a result of this hedge, millions of Indians died through this enforced salt tax. And when they decided to stop manning the hedge, because it's man-made, the hedge disappeared. It disappeared from history. And 150 years later, still no one really knows much about this hedge. And I was just obsessed with that story.
And was part of the obsession, you think, that it gave you a kind of gateway to understand your father or your family?
It made me think, I wonder if anyone I'm related to was involved in the hedge. It made me think, isn't it weird, massive, life-changing things can happen in history and we completely forget them? At that time, I didn't connect it with the work that I do now because I wasn't doing the work that I do now. The connection was the identity and having to know our history. And if we don't even know our history, how do we know our identity? And that part of the story I found really interesting. And there was something about the fact that nature was used against us in a way that was really damaging to humanity. And it surprised me that we don't learn about things like this in school. All we're told, or many people think about the British in India, is we helped build the railroads and we helped with infrastructure. There's not really much conversation or story around actually the devastating impacts the British Empire had on the country.
And this kind of spark that this story ignited in you, this obsession that began 10 years ago, where did that lead you? Because you went out to India to visit India, and did that feel like, oh, this is enough, I've seen now? Or
no, it wasn't. It was definitely an itch that wasn't scratched. So I was obsessed with the hedge, and I used to run. As I said, I'd moved to Manchester. I didn't know anybody, and it's really hard to make friends in your mid-20s, and you work full time for yourself. So I'd started these kind of events called Better Not Stop, which was something my dad had said to me when he was in his hospice about I shouldn't stop pursuing stuff I love. And I used to do a weird variety of things: movie nights, documentary screenings, speaking events and stuff. And I'd done an adventure planning workshop. And I'd basically, what that looked like is I just brought a big map of the world to a cafe, and people turned up and we talked about the adventures we wanted to go on. And at the time, I was separately, again, hyperfixated on what makes people happy. So I'd read something called the Great Happiness Report, which had data showing what makes people happy, which had voted Copenhagen the happiest place to live. Someone at that table said, oh, have you heard of Bhutan? It's a country that measures everything by gross national happiness. And I was like, that's an interesting story. And he was asking me about my next adventure. And I said, well, I'm obsessed with this hedge in India. I'd love to go to India and kind of travel the length of it. I quite like slow, long travel journeys. I like to travel by train through countries a lot. And he suggested, rather than go to India by plane, why didn't I travel to India through these 2 points, Copenhagen to Bhutan, and then end up in India? And I thought, that sounds like an amazing adventure. I'm going to do that. Unfortunately, I was out there with a partner who didn't enjoy India. So we made the decision to come back to the UK. So I never actually got to do any exploring of the hedge. So that was a huge itch that didn't get scratched at that point. And that was 2017.
So that was 2017. And then a year ago, you bumped back into Dan Beaumont.
Yeah.
And And he is, he's an epic ultra runner, adventurer, self-supported adventures that he goes on, fascinating to speak to, and the things that he does. How did that then become, and I know the answer to this because I know it's all Dan's fault, that became, I'm not going to just go and visit the hedge, I'm going to run the entire length of the hedge across India, having not been a runner.
Yeah. So, it escalated.
It really escalated.
So, firstly, it wasn't my partner's fault I came back from India. It was a joint decision. It was right at the time. And if I hadn't come back, I wouldn't have gone to a travel conference in the Czech Republic and met Dan a few months later. So for that, I'm forever thankful. The universe does the universe. And we had connected on the fact that he's from the same town as my best friend. And he also loves slow travel. Also, he's done the Caminos. He goes on big hiking adventures. That's how I knew Dan, big cycling adventures. So when he had become an ultra runner, I was like, oh, this is like a new side to Dan. But he remembered my obsession with the hedge. Yeah. So one of the first things he said to me is, are you going to go visit the hedge then? I can't believe you've still not done it, in all this time. And we were talking about it, and through serendipity, I'd invited him to a dinner I'd been invited to in Bristol on Earth Day. And on the way to the dinner, he suggested I meet his friend Nina, who co-founded the Green Runners, which you've probably heard of, Claire, which is a community for runners that care about the planet. And we walked into this dinner, and not only was Nina at this dinner, she knew who I was and had qualified to be a running coach that day. And Dan just looked at me and was like, I think you should run the hedge.
Oh my God, Hannah, the universe wants you to run this damn hedge.
Yeah, and
bad.
And I didn't want to do it. Yeah, so I wasn't interested. It happened to be Bristol Running Show that weekend. So they asked me to stay and help on the Green Runners store, which I offered to do, even though I wasn't a runner. So I signed up to the Green Runners that weekend without having really been on a run. And in the car on the way there, I said, look, if I meet someone that's running across India or an older lady who is a runner, I might be tempted. And then I met two people concurrently, one that was just about to run across India and the other who had just run across Australia. And then by the end of that weekend, I was like, right,
this is out of my hands now.
It's out of my hands. I'm running across India. How long is it going to take? Well, the last slow travel trip, the Bhutan trip I mentioned earlier, had taken me 18 months from deciding I was going to go to leave. So that was the time frame I gave myself for this one.
And what is the countdown now?
So we are on, I think, 172 days. So whenever this podcast goes out, obviously it'll be sooner. But yeah, we are close now. Less than 6 months till we leave.
And you mentioned to me earlier before we start recording that you are one day away from a year of training peaks.
Yeah.
And also it's your birthday.
Yeah.
So all of these things happen at the same time for
all
you.
happening at the same time, yeah.
So that means does that mean you started running a year ago? And just to be really, really clear for everybody, the Project Salt Run distance, just talk to us about what it's actually going to involve in terms of distance.
Yep. So it's actually the Inland Customs Line, which I'll be running, was the name of the hedge, of the Great Hedge of India. And there's one map in the whole world that it's on. It's a 19th century map, which is available in the British Library if you request it. So using that map, we have taken pictures, planned it out on a digital app called Komoot and Google Earth. It actually starts in Pakistan because obviously there wasn't partition when the hedge existed. So we'll be running from the Himalayas, like the Salt Flats, all the way to my dad's childhood home in Calcutta. So the hedge the Inland Customs Lines finishes just before that in Orissa. So we're just running a little bit further. It works out. Well, I thought I can't not run to my dad's house.
Yeah, keep going.
It works out about 100 marathons in 100 days. So it's a nice number.
Yeah.
It sounds nice.
Yeah, it sounds nice good. To say. It's lovely
nice
to say.
Yeah,
you're going to run that. But yeah, and really, a year ago you weren't a runner, and now we're 172, give or take, days away from you running 100 marathons in 100 days. What's the journey been like to get from the very first run that you did on Training Peaks to now? Because you are also, along the way, you've run ultras, you've done multi-days, you've got another challenge coming up in 2 weeks' time. Mm-hmm. You haven't just taken this easy and quietly, trained away. you've really, really gone all out on this. So just talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so my Training Peaks run, actually, first one was 24th of May. I started doing some running, like a few ad hoc runs before. I think mostly to show Nina that I was willing. And then Nina was like, right, I'll take you on kind of as a client a little bit later in the month. I mean, we all say as business owners that you have the big goal and you break it down into smaller steps. So in my head, I thought, right, this is ridiculous. I've never even run a marathon. So I thought, right, if I can go from 0 to marathon in 6 months, I can probably do it. I don't really know what my thought process was, but I thought if I can go from nothing and really get to that kind of ultra stage within 6 months, then I know I've got the dedication, the focus and the discipline to then spend a year really dedicating my life to making this happen. And that was also me recognising that I would have to change my entire business. So I could dedicate 6 months to see if that was something that I was really prepared to do.
And you achieved that. Was that the Lady Bower?
Yeah, it was in 5 months. Yeah, the Lady Bower.
Yeah, which I also ran.
I think you finished like 4 hours before I did finish.
You did finish, and that's incredible to have gone from essentially non-runner through to running an ultra in November in the Peak District, which is, you know, incredible. And what's that kind of physical journey has obviously had a massive impact on you and like your day-to-day life, but mentally as well. How do you feel that there's been like a shift? Like what's it been like? What lessons have you learned?
I mean, a lot of the things that when runners used to say it, I just roll my eyes. So things like, oh, it really helps me clear my head. It helps me go through my thoughts. I remember the first time someone suggested running without music, and I was like, are you an absolute sociopath? Why would you ever not have music getting you through this, or a podcast getting you through? Whereas actually some runs are so much nicer when you're not listening to music. And I think one of the major things that I need to thank Dan for is not just getting me into running, but he took me straight into trail running. Road running is not really something I do at all unless I really, really have to. It's along the trails or along the canals. And that is a completely different way to run as well, where you're running in nature. Yeah.
And do you think, when you're running, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about India? Are you imagining being there? Are you seeing yourself at the end of each day? You know, being in the van with everybody, do you ever dare dream of the final step, the finish line, or is that too much?
I think it's too much because there's so many things before that. I said it a few times recently, which I'm sure I will absolutely regret saying, is I feel like running's going to be the easy bit.
Yeah.
When all my job is waking up, eating, running, sleeping, recovering for 100 days, is going to be a very different lifestyle than running 2 businesses, fundraising for that run and training for that run.
Yeah.
So, and all the other things. I've renovated a boat in the last 12 months as well. So, you know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm obviously worried about the run, but it feels like once we're there, the moment I'm most excited about is that first day.
Yeah.
The first run is what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's making me first even thinking about that, what that must be like, because you've got this incredible team around you. So just tell us a little bit about the makeup of that team and the logistics. Like how I wouldn't even know where to begin pulling something like this together. You've worked in events, and I think that is playing an absolutely critical role in your planning capabilities, the fact you're keeping calm through this process and being able to, you know, break this whole thing down. But like, talk to me about the team and what's going on at the moment.
So at the moment we've got a team of, there's 7 of us, me included. So we've got Nina, who's my running coach, who's taking me on the whole journey through, making sure she's setting my challenges, not pushing me too hard, who's been incredible. I mean, if a running coach can get me from 0 to ultra marathoner in 5 months, she's a pretty good coach. Then we've got Mike Shaw, who's a documentary filmmaker. He came on board, actually. He premiered his film at the Better Business Summit, which is a conference I run in January, and came to see me talk publicly about Project Salt Run for the first time, which was some slides Dan had put together for me, and I kind of went up there and winged it. And he loved the story so much, he was like, I'm in, I want to be involved. And I wasn't quite sure about that at first, but he spoke to a few other members of the team first. and then has ended up working on the project. He's brilliant. And then we've got Becca and Joelle, who I met around the same time I met Dan. I think I met them at the Adventure Travel Film Festival in 2017, 2018. And they had just sent me a random email about the week after Lady Bower, when I was like, right, this is a thing now. I've done the run. We need to actually start planning. And I'd gone to Nina's with Dan, and we'd done a strategy day, and we were like, we need someone to film this. And the only people me and Dan could think of were the only two people we knew that had filmed a round the world trip in an overland car, which was Becca, Joelle and Max. Yeah. And they just randomly sent me an email saying, haven't spoken to you in ages. So I picked up the phone and said, yeah, do you want to come to India for 4 months next year? And they were both like, yeah, we're up for it.
How does it feel to have this, to have these people around you who are just so, what is it? They're captivated by the idea. They are putting so much trust and belief in you that you can do it, and together you can make it happen. That just must feel amazing.
But it's also serendipity. Becca and Joelle had just come back from, they'd done the Pan American Highway. They'd converted a yellow school bus and travelled from Alaska to Argentina. And they'd just come back. They're making a documentary on it. And they were like, what's our next big adventure? Yeah. And I was like, here's a big adventure. Yeah. And we had been planning an adventure together, actually, back in 2018, 19. And we couldn't do it because of COVID. So it was almost like we were just picking up how we're going to do an adventure together. And then Natalie and Alex I met when I was helping Dan on his Paddy Buckley round, which is a 100-kilometre challenge in Wales. And I told them about Project Salt Run, and they live quite close to Manchester, and we've become friends. And they're like, do you know what? We're in as well.
Yeah.
And so we're a ragtag bunch of people, but it's not just me. That's the thing about Project Salt Run. I couldn't do it on my own. Everyone has come together, and we're like, we want to do something as a group. So that's what the exciting thing is about Project Salt Run, is it's like this group of people that have come together, all with a solid vision of what we can do, and believing in it.
Yeah, that's just, I mean, the biggest thing to take away at the moment is that's so powerful. You've all really bought into this vision and this desire to see the impact of Project Salt Run. Like the fact that there's a documentary you're making the documentary around it. You want to talk about it as much as possible. You have your absolutely infamous Instagram account, which I really think everyone that listens to this needs to go and follow Hannah's Instagram account, which I'll put a link into the show notes, which is Project Salt Run, because it is brilliant. You commit to doing like one reel a day to get your content out there. And then you have your podcast as well. So it's like every single aspect of this is about telling the story and sharing the story and making as much impact as possible. So what do you hope the ripple effect and impact of Project Salt Run will be?
People thinking, why not me?
Oh, wow, yeah.
Because, that's why we're telling the story as we go. Because for me, when I look at adventure documentaries or stories, it's always after the fact. Like, we've conquered this peak, or we've completed this challenge. And you don't get to know the stuff that I'm interested in, which is like, how long did you plan for it? Like, how much did it cost you? Things like, people don't know that it costs like £60,000 to get a permit for Everest. It's like, it's such a privilege to be able to afford to do something like that. So we wanted to share those parts of the story, because as adventurers, all of us are in our own different ways, and travellers, these are the things we care about and are interested in. So we thought, let's share that part of the story with people, because we want everyone to kind of come along on that journey, and we're not going to get it right the whole time, and things are going to change, and we're going to have to adapt. So it also keeps us accountable as a group. Yeah. Like, we've got a countdown. That the podcast is 30 weeks ago, 29 weeks ago, 28 weeks ago. We're telling you in real time what challenges we're having. And the same with the Instagram account. You're seeing when I am having crap morning runs, or when, I've been stuck in the office till 10 o'clock because I've gone for a run at a different time of the day, or there's no content about my social life because that doesn't exist anymore, and it's just running and work, and me talking about the struggle of that. Yeah. It's not easy, but it is possible. And I think I genuinely do think, like, if I can do it, then other people can too.
How are you finding this? Like, is it the monotony of of work, run, even when you don't feel like it? What is it that's still dry? Like, yes, there is the big goal of Project Salt Run. is it the being accountable to your team that's getting you out there? Is it that you've now just automatically run and don't need to think about it? Like, how are you keeping that going?
Because Project Salt Run is a run. That's what we're doing. But we haven't talked about, like, the reason I'm doing it is because I feel like for the last 3 years, I've been working in a business where almost on a weekly basis, I am challenging the system that the East India Company put us in. The East India Company created shareholder value. That company law exists because the East India Company created. They were the first corporation. You know, we think Amazon and Google are like the first no, it was the East India Company. They were doing it before everybody else. And they created a system in which it doesn't matter what you do as an organisation, as long as you're making money for the shareholders, you're good and it's legal. And I help businesses become B Corp certified. There is a legal change B Corps make that say this is not the way to be. We should be thinking about stakeholder value, how we're affecting people and the planet. So the story is, let's look at this evil thing that existed and let's reclaim that space as something positive. We're aiming to not only try and create systems change and encourage businesses to make that change, and for the UK government to make that change in policy, but along the way to raise £1 million for 1% for the planet, for climate action, for those who are affected by the difficult and ultimately stupid decisions businesses are making that are ruining the planet we live on.
Yeah. And how are you, I mean, first of all, how is that going with fundraising? But also on the flip side as well, you mentioned about fundraising for the project itself. Mm-hmm. So how are you doing? How are those working at the moment?
So the first bit was like, how do you budget for a thing that's never been done before, which is pretty hard. So we're doing it in 2 steps. So as I mentioned, I run the Better Business Network. We're an organisation that helps businesses increase their positive impact. So we've got a group of businesses who are interested in the challenge. We're telling people about it, but there's 2 things we're trying to fundraise for. One, we're trying to raise the money so we can do the trip. The second part is we are trying to raise sponsorship money while we're out there. Now, that will be more existing and taking place when we leave in October. So really the focus at the moment is how do we raise money to get out there? We're trying to be as transparent as possible. So we've got 2 different platforms we're raising money on. Crowdfunder for the project, GiveStar for 1% for the planet. So we're just trying to be really clear in our messaging. Yeah. If you give us some money, this is what it goes towards when you send it to us. We're still finalising the costs of the trip, but it's likely to be between 150 to 250,000 pounds. It's no mean feat of how much the trip's going to cost us to do it safely, to create content to amplify the impact of it, like the documentary, and content while we're on the road, to keep us all safe, and also the logistics of it as well. So how we can have impact while we're going, how can we be spending that money in the communities in which we're staying. And we're working with a local expedition company, and our advisor, again, another bit of serendipity, were voted the world's best travel company for the Earth by National Geographic, and they just so happen to be the parents of an artist and her husband who've just brought out an exhibition at Somerset House about the hedge.
Oh my god!
And that's how we met. So that was mad. And so we're working with them. So yeah, costs are still up in the air, film permits, visas, all that kind of stuff. But at the moment we're fundraising to get enough money. At the moment the focus is getting enough money to take us to India. Yeah. Ideally it would be great if we had all the money we needed for the entire challenge before we leave. The likelihood of that is going to be quite low. Are we going to have enough money to cover the team's costs so they can work on the project up until October, and to pay for our flights and maybe the first month? That's kind of our initial first goal.
Yeah. And then when you're over there, is there like a vehicle? Are you going to be in a vehicle? Is it like you're all asleep in a van? Like how?
I will be sleeping in a van.
Right.
The whole time.
Wow. Okay. And then what about like, have you planned that out almost like night by night? Have you set, each checkpoint, if you like, along the way, so you know where you want to get to each day and where you're going to fuel and
like as much as we can. So because we want to do it continuously, without any rest days, we've got an idea of where we'll be at certain points. Yeah. it will be about 12 days for the Pakistan part of the trip. And then the India part of the trip will be the rest of it. There's going to be some milestone places we're going to, like the Taj Mahal, New Delhi, etc., major cities, where we, those will be kind of probably the bits that will tell the story in the best way possible. But also we want to visit NGOs on the road as well. The aim is that I'm running for 6 to 8 hours a day, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, allowing maybe a little bit of time for filming in the afternoon, but mostly recovering in the afternoons. I've spoken to quite a few multi-day runners. Nick Butter, who's run a marathon in every country. Deo Katu, who ran from South Africa to London. Nikki Love, who ran across Australia. All of them did them consecutively, lots of consecutive days. So I've got lots of advice from them, and they're just like, get through the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's mentioned in the book. I've just passed you there as well, which is
so now in my head I just actually need to run 3 weeks.
Yeah, you just need to run 3 weeks, and then by that time it's just muscle memory. Everything's fine. So you just have to push through that section. And I think that's where, I mean, are you expecting, maybe it will happen in the first 3 weeks, maybe, or who knows, but there is going to be times when you hit real mental lows, like tiredness or self-doubt, or things are going to happen. Like, things happen in an ultra run, a single day ultra run, where you kind of experience, real lows and lows. You have to problem solve. So there's going to be many, many, many problems along the way. And like, how are you almost like mentally, you're strengthening your body, but how are you mentally preparing to get through those moments? Or
it's going to be hard. I'm not denying that. I'm trying to do it step by step. So we've set some challenges over the next few months to kind of test that. Test where those break points are going to be. So, for example, at the end of May, I'm doing 3 ultras in 3 days. And that will be just me and Mike in Pembrokeshire. So there won't be the support of the team. I will be running alone. I won't have a pacer. I'll be self-navigating. So that's going to be a big challenge. At the Peak Divide that I did last weekend, it was great. And I met 2 amazing women who ran with me the whole thing. And to be honest, it felt like a bit of a jolly. And then
you wouldn't have said that a year ago.
I wouldn't have said that a year ago.
76 miles across the Peak District. Yeah, it's just a nice weekend out with some mates.
It's great. The coast to coast is going to be 4 marathons in 4 days, a rest day. We're going to see how that works, and then 3 marathons in 3 days. For that one, I've booked us tickets to all go see Basement Jaxx on the last day.
Great, love it.
So that will be the thing we're kind of aiming towards. But yeah, I am trying to think of that. I'm trying to think of things that I can look forward to at the end of every day.
Yeah.
And ways in which we can break it up. Is it running for 10k and then having an hour break and running for another 10k? I haven't done enough multi-day running to know what's going to work. So it is going to, the whole thing will be an experiment.
It's going to be an extreme learning curve. No one's done this before. It's not like you can refer to it. It's going to be, all of this is complete. You're in new territory. No matter how much you train, this is completely uncharted territory for everyone and for your team as well. And probably very, very quickly, you'll know each other really well now, but you'll really understand what it is that people need, when you need that tough love and when you just need someone to give you a bit of a cuddle and say it's going to be okay. And I guess they're going to really get that, aren't they, as they support you along the journey. That's really important to have that trust. And
I think being single for the last couple of years has helped that, because I have been able to be quite selfish about knowing what's good for me. So, and I think being a bit older, you know who you are a bit better. So, for example, when I split with my partner, I was spending a lot of weekends alone because everyone's partnered up. And I was working on the boat that I just bought. And I realised actually after a few months that when I spent entire weekends on my own, not speaking to anybody else, I was coming in so refreshed to work on a Monday because I had had time to recharge my battery. And I was, that's the thing I need. 1 or 2 days where I'm just on my own. And so it's really easy for me to turn around to the team and say, even when we've spent like quite a few days together now, when we're all spending time together, I can retreat for an hour, 2 hours. No one's offended by it. They know that that's what I need. So knowing myself a lot better and being able to vocalise that to the team has been really helpful. Self-awareness
and communication. Those things definitely, I think, I'm like you in my 40, well, you're 41 tomorrow, so you're just in your 40s, it's okay. But I do think that it comes with that, that being a bit older and having that opportunity to understand yourself and to have seen yourself in life go through lots of different things and survive lots of different things, and so you know exactly what it takes for you to like go into a new challenge. And I think it's, you know, I think there's going to be a lot of women of the similar age to us who will be really captured by your story and what you're going out there and doing. You know, yes, you have a team around you, but also you're the one on the road and you're the one doing it and training for it, and it's incredibly inspiring. Do you think you're brave? Are you a brave person?
No. I mean, I can't even watch a horror film on my own, so not particularly. No, I don't think I am. I think I'm resilient.
Yeah.
And I think I've got courage. But there's things like Project Salt One, I don't have a choice. Like, I haven't been given a choice. So, you know, Nina was put in front of me, Will Robinson was put in front of me, Nikki Love were put in front of me. Within a matter of days, I was running across India, whether I liked it or not. And then when it clicked to me that the run was a symbol of fighting against the East India Company and the thing that I had been fighting against for the last 3 years in my business, it was like, that's why it's taken to now for this to be the story.
Yeah.
And when I approached 1% for the Planet, who I've also worked with for years, who we encourage our members to be a member of, and said, people do these big challenges, but they never do it for the planet that we live on.
Yeah.
I want to do it for the planet we live on. And everyone at 1% was like, we're into this. And it was almost all these different parts all just came together. I am just one part of that. It wouldn't work if all the other pieces hadn't fitted in.
It's really just feels more than anything. And I can't remember which episode of your podcast where you talked about, really, you went into depth about the serendipity of all of these meetings. And I was listening to it on a run, and I don't know if I messaged you or I just thought about messaging you, and it was like, for God's sake, like, you can't. And then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and it's just
and they keep happening, Claire.
Yeah.
So an example I'll give you of one that happened last week was we've just applied for a National Geographic fund. I mean, we probably won't get it, but we've applied for it anyway. Yeah. And we found out that Mandeep's expedition company are National Geographic, you know, best for the world. So we thought we really want him to partner with us on this application it was our first meeting with him. Yeah. So we were like, oh, you know, it's a big ask, isn't it? Yeah. Could you put your name down on this application for £100,000 for what were we offering him? Essentially nothing. And we wanted to put something in this application that made it really stand out to National Geographic. How do we amplify the impact and the story and actually make this a practical thing? And me and Mike have been playing around with the application for a couple of days, and it was the Easter weekend. And I said, look, we just need to drop it and pick, you know what it's like. You must do this with Dom all the time. You kind of go, we're not there. Yeah. There's threads are there. I'm going to go do something else and come back. Yeah. And we came back, met in London about an hour before we met Mandeep, and Mike went, I've got it. He's like, I've got it. We're going to create a memoirs of the trip, and it's going to be a travel story, but a timeline of the East India Company and history, and we can put in case studies, and it'll be kind of like a coffee table book, but people can, and you know, he describes it a lot better than me, and it was his idea. But he was like, I was like, memoirs, I love that. I think that's brilliant. Let's do it. And Mike's new. I mean, he's new to the project. You know, everybody else on the project has known me for quite a while. Yeah. And he's also very doesn't believe in all this like universe manifesting stuff, which is fine. I'm like, well, I don't, but it's happening whether you like it or not. And we walked into this meeting with Mandeep, and we sat at the cafe, and it was annoyingly or not, it was around the corner from where my partner had used to live in London. So I wasn't particularly happy about being back in those sticks. And Mandeep walked in, and the first thing he said was, I definitely want to partner with you on this. And we were all like, oh, right, okay. Well, we really thought we were going to have to like pull out all the stops here. This is great. And then he said, I've got a gift for you all. And he pulled out a recycled paper with Indian paper, beautiful notebooks for all of us with Ibex expeditions with memoirs written across the top. And Mike's jaw dropped onto the floor. And I thought, yes, improved right yet again. And Mike was like, I cannot believe that just happened.
You're like, just hang out with me for a few days. This is what happens.
This is what happens.
It happens all the time.
It happens all the time. So it was quite funny because it was almost like Mike had gone, right, I'm all in.
Yeah.
I'm all in now. But it just keeps happening.
Yeah.
And so many of those things keep happening. And I think for a lot of people, it's too woo-woo saying manifest in the universe. I use serendipity, but
because this is not luck.
It's not
beyond luck.
It's just weird stuff.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah. You're being propelled towards this goal.
Yeah.
It makes me feel really excited because I almost feel like I want to say to the universe, why? Why is it so important? What's going to happen at the end of this?
I want to say, can I get all the money for the trip now then, if you're that sure I'm going to do it? Like, if you're that sure, universe.
Money. We haven't talked about, money. Stop giving me notebooks. I need cash.
Cash, money.
So what do the next few months look like then in terms of the build up? What are the next, what are you focusing on now?
So focus is on a challenge a month.
Right.
So I'm training about 6 days a week,
running,
and then alongside that also doing strength, also doing sauna. Sauna's the best actually because it's like working, but you're not actually working.
You can't put it on Strava.
You can't put it on Strava. You have to take your Garmin off as well. It's
Imagine
very
if you
annoying.
put it on Strava. Sat in a sauna for 8 minutes.
So we're just doing it challenge by challenge. So we've got the Pembrokeshire coast at the end of the month, and I've mentioned the other ones, and it's fundraising. It's now we've got a clearer cash flow of what we know we need to make every month. Two of the members of the team, Joelle and Mike specifically, are pretty much full time on this, so they need to take an income now. The whole expedition, both in the lead up and while I'm running, I'm taking no kind of money for it. And I also need to think about how do my businesses survive when I'm not in the country for 6 months, and that's a whole other huge thing to be considering and thinking about while I'm out there, because I have a team of people that have jobs that work for me. We've just hired 2 new people. We're hiring someone else this month, and then we'll be hiring somebody else before I leave. So these people all need to feel safe and secure in their job roles while I'm running across India. So that's, it's going to be a very intense 6 months of fundraising, training, and also stability within the business, which we have not ever had. So it's not like that's a given either.
Yeah. If people are listening to this and they're really captured by the story, how could they support in any way? But I guess fundraising being a really important part of that. How do people?
Yeah, well, I mean, just get in touch. Project Salt One on Instagram or Hannah Cox on LinkedIn. We are looking for individuals and businesses to support the trip. So whether that's through finances, great. But if you have a connection or a way you think you can amplify the message to the right audience, then I think that's just as important at the moment as well. We're doing this trip because we want to show that individuals who feel that they don't have any power can do stuff.
Yeah.
I think we see, tax, let's do a wealth tax, let's tax the billionaires. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
Like, I would love it to happen, but the reality is the people in the power that can change that law that works in their interests are not going to change that law that works in their interests. That's why they are where they are and why we are where we are with our morals and our ethics. Yeah. So we need to think about big system change, revolutionary action, and that's what we're trying to do with Project Salt Run. Because I will then feel like I have done what I can.
Yeah. Do you think that this process so far has changed you in any way, or do you think that you have just become more you?
Ooh. That's a really good question, actually. I feel more me than I have ever been, if that makes sense. I don't think it's changed me a huge amount. Well, actually, that's a lie. It has. I didn't have confidence in who I was before, and now I do. Yeah. So I knew who I was, but I wasn't confident in who that person was. I was embarrassed by it. I didn't like the fact that my brain worked differently to other people's. I was very aware that it did, but I found that very difficult. And I think now I've embraced those differences, everything is better. My social circle is larger, whereas I thought the weirder I got, the smaller that would get. And the opportunities and the people that really get what I do, really get what I do.
Yeah.
So, and I would say I'm more confident in myself as a person. I think I was always quite confident in my work, but I maybe wasn't confident personally. I don't know. I kind of separated those two things. So, yes, I have changed, but I've kind of stayed the same.
Yeah.
At the same.
Yeah. I understand.
I mean, you know me. You've known me this whole time.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I kind of framed it that way, because I do feel, especially talking to you today, that you have become more you. You're like the very best of Hannah Cox, just
Thanks.
Really the most you I've ever known you to be. And you look so kind of glowing and happy, and despite everything that you're clearly going through at the moment, and have done over the past 18 months, or even as long as I've known you, you've been through so much. Every single challenge that has come your way, you seem to have just been able to head down, plough through, and demonstrate the resilience that is within you, that is Hannah Cox, and always doing these things with this visionary goal and always thinking bigger than just you. And the ripple effect of your life, I think, is already incredible, and that's why I'm so excited for this challenge to take place, because like we're joking, the universe wants you to make it happen, but I think it's because when you do make it happen, and you will, that it's going to have a huge impact on the world. This is world changing as well as personally life changing, I think.
But that's only possible because other people are already getting it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it was just me on my own, I'd just be the crazy sim in the corner. But it's like everybody else is getting it too, and everybody connects to the story in a different way, whether it's the obsession with the hedge, they get really interested in that. I'm sure those book sales have just skyrocketed since got into it. But also the serendipity of it. Like no one was talking about this hedge. Yeah. And then suddenly I'm talking about it. Suddenly there's an exhibition at Somerset House about it. Yeah. Suddenly Cliff Southcombe wrote into The Guardian saying, why is no one talking about this at schools? And I connected with Cliff. Turns out he has an Airbnb in Robin Hood's Bay, which is where the Coast to Coast finishes. Of course he does.
Of course he does.
Of course he does. But it's not without, I mean, I don't want to be sitting here with you being like, oh, it's, and then I get up and train and I'm working out how to do stuff. Like, I had a full-blown panic attack, and I'm talking like crying, couldn't cope. It had been building up for a few days. It was just after I did a talk in Bristol with the Green Runners. Real imposter syndrome. I asked the audience who's been running less than a year, and I was the only one. Oh my God, the only one. And the next day, me, Mike, and Nina went to go to a climbing gym together. I've really got into climbing recently as well, which isn't a very safe sport to get into when you're running. Yeah. But on the way, I just had a panic attack in the car on the way there, and I just could not stop crying. Couldn't get it together. Went climbing for a bit. Kind of got it together enough to go climbing. Maybe for about an hour. Was terrible company. And then me and Nina were supposed to go for a run, and actually I just spent 2 hours crying in her car. So it was like it was a full day of panic attack. It wasn't, like I had a little quiet. I had a really, so it's not easy. And I think sometimes, but that is part of the story. Yes. It's not easy, and it is hard. So I'm not sitting here saying this whole thing is really easy to do, but I also feel that I have not been given a choice but to do it. Yeah. So it's kind of like I've been almost like a bit of a poison chalice at the moment. Yeah. I'm like, I've got to do this thing. I don't really...
You're doing it.
I'm doing it. But it's not always really easy, and
I think you've shared that really. You do share that really honestly and openly on your Instagram. You definitely don't make it out like, here's my get ready with me to go for a run reel. That doesn't happen. It's like you in your hoodie, like having some noodles. Like, I don't want to go, but I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah, and there's definitely it's Instagram versus reality. We just get the reality.
Yeah, it's just reality.
It's
yeah,
just me and my hoodie.
Like,
I'm
not going to make this nice for you. We're going out in the rain. It's going to be hell. I'm doing 10 miles. I hate my life.
Yeah, well, I think that's you'll know this is, from what we were talking about before. Like, it's just like, come on, like, I'm not going to get a collection with Gymshark anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? Like,
More for them.
Well, exactly.
More for them. Put your money where your mouth is.
but it's just, that's the reality of doing hard stuff. It's not pretty all the time. I don't have the time to make it look pretty, so you're just going to get what it is.
Yeah. But you also do share those moments when you've had anxiety or you've had kind of panic attacks, and you've had, look, here's the reality. You've had to stop. You had that one piece of content where you had to stop on your run, and you were like in tears. And
that was was the day before the panic attack.
This had bbeen building up then, hadn't it? Yeah. And what was that? Was that like caused by a sense of overwhelm by the whole project, or was it like? Is it just keep building up inside, or is it like something that kind of will trigger it? It's
overwhelm of the whole project,
exhaustion
really.
As well, I imagine.
Yeah, it's overwhelm of the whole thing because it feels so out of my hands that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And because it's not just me, there's 7 people on the team all believing it, plus everyone in the Better Business Network. The team that I work with day to day at Better Not Stop and the Better Business Network have all got behind it to make it happen. When there's an amazing feeling when people believe in you.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, but it also has its pressure along with it, because then I'm like, now I have to do it because everyone's expecting me to. I can't just not achieve the goal because everybody else has given up their time to make this goal happen, and time is our most precious thing. So I feel a lot of pressure to do it because everybody else has given up so much for me to be able to do it.
Yeah, and you are only human.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, every single angle that you try and talk about this project, the history, the family, the training, the running, the team, everything about it is really just so inspiring. It's mind-blowing. You know that it's exactly the type of story that I love. First time I heard about it, I've been on board really trying to support you and believe in you as well. I really do believe in you that you can do it. I feel like emotional talking about this project. It is really an emotional thing.
It is emotional. It's too big.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's too big, and don't, because you're going to make me cry. When you said, have I changed? And I have.
Yeah.
Because I've never felt I could do anything. So now having a lot of people thinking I can do something, which is also so mental, is overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever felt that from any other humans.
Yeah.
So it's been a really, lovely experience to have that.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Thank you. Just been handed some tissues because we're both gonna.
Yeah, we're both.
It's only a matter of
thanks.
Time.
I think it's really difficult to be incredibly vulnerable with who you are with other people, but it's also part of what's really scary is the more vulnerable I am, the better things are happening.
Yeah.
But it's been really, really hard to do that.
Yeah.
And, it's taken me up till now to be able to be comfortable in who I am. So, and not maybe have that shield of my work, which always felt like separate, and a very small circle of friends to keep me safe. And I've kind of opened myself up to having more friends and being more vulnerable. And wow, some amazing stuff has happened, but it's scary because you're right. I think this does feel like a massive, massive thing that we're doing. And there's some things that I can't talk about on the podcast yet, but there's opportunities that are coming up. And I'm like, why are you talking to me about this? This is crazy. So, that's scary. I've never experienced that. Never experienced anything like this in my life. And it's like a tsunami of stuff crashing around me all the time.
Yeah. You can handle it. You're Hannah Cox.
Thanks, mate.
I just want to really thank you for being vulnerable with me and for coming onto this podcast and sharing this story. I don't know why it makes me so emotional to talk to you about it, but I think it's just because I just see somebody who is truly going out there and achieving a dream that you've had for 10 years that would have been out of the realms of possibility a few years ago for you, and you would never have seen yourself as this person. And now not only are you this person, you're doing it with this team of people that believe in you. And God's like, wow, that's just really brilliant.
I think we're crying because, without going into the depths of it, about 2 years ago, I had something really awful happen. And my partner at the time dismissed it. And I remember talking about it with you in the office, and you got really upset.
Yeah.
And I thought, I should be really upset about this, but the person I'm with has dismissed it. And that led to a journey of self-discovery, really, and was one of the reasons that we're not together anymore. Because it was almost like I was in this alternative universe. And my personal self-esteem was incredibly low 2 years ago when I left that relationship, and I won't place the entire blame on my ex-partner. I think I'd allowed myself to be put in to diminish who I was, because I felt that I had to diminish who I was to be in a relationship, and to have the freedom to be who I want to be is incredible. But to think where I was 2 years ago is like a completely different space. Yeah. So it's actually someone that's known me from then to now. It's like you've seen that happen. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm still the same person. But you
still make me cry.
Yeah, sorry. But you've
That's the common thread.
But you've seen that. I think you saw me at that really low point where I didn't actually even realise that was my lowest point.
Yeah, that's why every single piece of content that you share and every part of the story that you share, I'm probably the first person to like it, because I'm just so fucking proud of you. I'm so fucking proud of you. That's what I wanted to tell you today.
Thanks,
really
mate.
Proud of you.
I just don't think we can't define ourselves by our traumas, because then we are defined by them. I think I've always focused on that, because I don't want to be known as the traumatic things that have happened to me. I want to be known for the good things that I'm creating. Yeah. So, and I think what we focus on is what defines us. And I think we've both seen people who've had bad things happen to them and can't get out of that spiral, that route, and it consumes and it's a really hard thing to do. And that is the luck bit, because I think it is hard to get from that. And it's a combination of your own hard work, having the right people around you in the right moments to be able to move on from that space. And that's been the lucky bit for me, is that I've been able to do that at this time.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for sharing Project Salt Run.
Here we are, crying.
I know. It's just like back in the day.
I know.
But no, I really, really am grateful to you. And I just really urge anyone that's listening to this podcast to first of all, immediately go to Hannah's podcast, Project Salt Run. You're in the app. You might as well go and search.
Yeah, go in. And Joel's got a great voice.
Yes. Oh, he really does.
Doesn't he?
Really does. He sounds very professional.
He is.
He's like a real podcaster.
Yes, he is. It's like you.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. No, not like me at all. And I have to say, if you're a listener to Hannah's Project Salt Run podcast, then it will make sense when I say I love the theme tune. Okay, so now go and listen to it, and that will make sense to you. But please go and listen to Hannah's podcast. Follow the journey. We're getting closer and closer and closer. So they're really ramping things up. There's so much to learn. Really get yourself into this project so that by the time that they're out there in India, they've got as much support as possible. Follow Hannah on Instagram. It's just Project Salt Run, isn't it? Project Salt Run. It will pressurise her to keep doing a reel a day because she needs a bit more pressure.
I do, yeah.
And in the show notes for this show, I will also put in the fundraising platforms and Hannah's contact details, so that if you do so wish to contribute towards the fundraising or to making the project happen, or you want to contact Hannah with regards to any of that,
or come on a run.
Do. Or go on a run.
Yeah,
Why not
come
go
join
on a
me.
run? Why not start running if you're not running? Everyone that listens to it is a
Everyone,
runner.
everyone who
Yeah,
listens
trust
to
me,
it's
they're
got
all
to be a
runners.
runner.
They're already doing that. But yeah, there are also these challenges that you've got coming up, which I know some of them.
Yeah,
people
coast to
quite
coast
support.
people can get involved in, and we've got one coming up with Kendall Calling, which is exciting, and people will be able to get involved in that.
Great. So there's so many ways to show your support. But yes, thank you again, Hannah Cox, a legend. I'm so excited for what's going to happen next, because I mean, what is going to happen after this? That we'll get you back on.
Yeah,
Obviously,
100%.
finish. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.